Okay, welcome to the deep dive. We've looked through the sources you shared.
Yeah, the ones focusing on how organizations, well, how they actually work.
Exactly. And specifically that link between the design of a company and how people behave inside it.
Right, the human side of structure.
Think of this as a shortcut, maybe, to understanding how pay systems, performance reviews, all that stuff.
Huh.
It's not just admin. It actively shapes what people do.
It really does. The structure isn't just there, it influences things, sometimes in ways you wouldn't expect.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, what's so interesting in the material is seeing those rules, the company structures,
Yeah.
how they directly mesh with how people see their own value, their future there.
So it's psychology meeting the org chart, basically.
Pretty much. It's not just policy on paper.
That really jumped out at me too, like the basketball team analogy in the sources.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one.
You're on the team, you feel like you're putting up good numbers, but maybe you're paid less than someone similar. What happens then?
Well, the sources suggest initially it could go a couple of ways.
Okay.
Some players might get that fire, I'll show mine worth more. They push harder.
Right, try to prove their value.
But, and this is key, the research also shows a lot of players actually get demotivated.
Ah.
And here's the really telling detail. Feeling underpaid. It sometimes makes those players take more shots.
More shots, so trying harder.
Kind of,
Huh.
but often inefficient shots. Bad choices on the court. It looks like effort, maybe, but it can drag the whole team down.
Wow, so the effort is there, but it's misplaced because of how they feel valued.
Yeah.
That's counterintuitive.
Exactly. And it's not just about the salary figure either, is it?
No, the sources definitely brought up promotions too. Career path, growth.
Absolutely crucial.
Mhm.
Promotions, signal recognition, a future. You could have decent pay, but if advancing feels random or impossible,
Yeah, that creates its own problems.
that feeling of unfairness creeps in again. Any system pay, promotions, whatever, if it doesn't feel fair.
Performance suffers
Yeah.
right across the board.
You got it. Suboptimal performance becomes the norm.
Okay, so feeling undervalued? Yeah, some might strive harder, but many underperform, taking those inefficient shots in their jobs.
And that ties directly back to what the sources call perceived inequity.
Perceived inequity. So it's the feeling of unfairness.
Precisely. It's not always the objective fact, but the perception compared to others
Right.
or to your own contribution.
Right.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Remember that study on the insurance underwriters?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The one where they kind of manipulated how rewarded people felt?
That's the one. So the underwriters, they led to feel over-rewarded.
Uh-huh.
They actually performed better,
Better. When they felt they were getting more than they deserved. That's wild.
isn't it? Maybe they felt they had to live up to it or,
Mm.
justify that extra value.
Okay.
And the flip side is just as powerful. The ones made to feel under-rewarded.
Let me guess. Performance dropped.
Significantly worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really highlights how much that subjective sense of fairness drives actual output.
Okay, let's make this really concrete. The sources had that sales team example, right?
Yeah, the real world scenario.
So picture the sales team. Bonuses are tiny, mostly fixed salary. Your star performer, smashing targets, gets paid pretty much the same as the person just scraping by. What happens?
Well, the sources call that a perverse incentive. It does the opposite of what you want.
How so?
The top performer feels totally undervalued, right?
Mm.
Why kill yourself if the reward's the same as coasting?
So they might leave or just ease off the gas.
Exactly. They might check out mentally or physically. Find a competitor who rewards effort.
And the low performer.
What's their motivation to improve? They're getting paid anyway. Complacency can set in.
So the system accidentally discourages the high performers and doesn't push the low performers. Team results suffer.
Totally. But contrast that, like the sources do, with a clear pay-for-performance model.
Where bonuses, maybe promotions, are directly tied to hitting sales goals.
Right. Suddenly, the top performer is motivated to stay and keep excelling. And the lower performer, they now have a very clear, tangible reason to step up their game.
That example just lays it bare, doesn't it? How you design these systems. It's fundamental.
It's not just an HR task. It shapes behavior, motivation, culture.
And ultimately, whether the organization actually succeeds.
Yeah, it signals what the company truly values, not just what it says it values.
So what does this all mean when you boil it down?
Well, I think the core message from these sources is pretty clear.
Fair pay, clear promotion paths, they aren't just nice to haves.
Definitely not. They're essential. fundamental drivers of good employee behavior, engagement, productivity.
And the overall success of the organization. Get the design wrong.
And you might unintentionally be encouraging the very behaviors you don't want.
It's about aligning the structure with the human response you're hoping for.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with a final thought to chew on. Think about the systems in places you know, your workplace, maybe somewhere you volunteer. Are the behaviors you see being accidentally encouraged or discouraged just by how rewards are set up, how things feel?
And what potential might be unlocked if that design was tweaked even slightly? What could changing it really achieve?